Welcome back to my new moon predictions by rising sign solar eclipse edition. And of course, a solar eclipse is by definition a new moon, and it's going to be at 9 degrees of Aries, Saturday, 29th of March. So this one is a partial solar eclipse, and it's not going to be as intense because it's not a full eclipse. However, Neptune is also changing signs for the first time since 2012 and won't come back to this sign for another 165 years. So it's a big deal from a generational perspective. And we also have Mercury and Venus still retrograde. Mercury also changing signs this weekend. So I think that although the actual eclipse itself is just a partial eclipse, we will be seeing signs of maybe intensity because there's just so many different things happening at that same weekend. Also, it's important that you know your rising sign because this is written for the rising sign and you're not going to get the same level of accuracy. So check the calculator below, put in your accurate birth time, and find out what your ascendant is. If you are a Taurus, but your ascendant is in Libra, then you want to listen for the Libra rising part of the video. You're going to get a lot more bang for your buck through that method. Okay, the other thing is that this is part of, this eclipse is part of the last 18 months of eclipses that we've had in Aries and Libra. It's like kind of the final hurrah. And we have already moved out of those signs technically, but it's going to give you that final flavor of what was happening in those last 18 months. And you can even look back to that April 2024 eclipse and see what were some of the themes that you're really dealing with at that time, and maybe you're sort of rounding those off in this weekend's eclipse. Bearing in mind that the eclipse effects are going to be for another month. It's a new moon, so we look to the next month ahead. And bearing in mind that this eclipse technically already sort of began at the last new moon at the end of February, also at 9 degrees of Pisces. So that 9 degrees is really activated, and that means that you can look to your chart and look for any planets that are at 9 degrees. And say you are a Libra rising and Mars is at 9 degrees. So therefore, that's going to be something related to your relationships being activated, no matter where Mars is in your chart. Okay, so that's one thing that we can get more specific around. But it's not just if you don't have Aries, then you're not going to experience this eclipse. That's not how it works. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, this eclipse is also the end of a 19-year cycle. It's part of a bigger Saros cycle, which I won't go into in this video, but also to say that these are always ongoing cycles in our life. And you can even just look at this as the month ahead and just simply look at the predictions based on that. So let's get started. Okay, Aries, this is an obvious one because obviously this is happening for you in your first house, meaning that it's about you. It's about your individuality. It's about what you want to do in life, how you see your role. And it's also about what you don't see yourself as, because it's a new moon, so you're ending things. You're ending things in order to make way for new beginnings. And you could look back at that April 2024 eclipse to have a good sense of what were some of the themes that you're really dealing with then, and maybe what are you rounding off in this weekend's eclipse. Now, this is also ruled by a very fierce Mars, which is your planet. And Mars is out of balance, meaning it's a little out of control. It's in the 4th house, meaning that it's a little bit emotional right now. And it's just feeling like it needs to get something out, but it's not able to do so fully. So bear that in mind, because there's a lot of mental angst right now, sort of things that are brewing in your subconscious, weighing you down, things that you have to deal with, unforeseen expenses, whatever it might be, that are making life a little bit tricky for you to fully move forward into that Aries new moon. So have a little bit of patience for yourself. This is also not a wonderful time for relationships. Your planet is debilitated Mars. Your partner's planet is also a little bit frigid. So a better time to really focus on you, your needs, and the things that you need to do in order to rejuvenate yourself. Okay, for Taurus rising, this is interesting because there's two things happening at once. One is that this is a really great eclipse for actually getting away from things, going on a retreat, taking some time for yourself, doing a little bit of spiritual work, whatever it is that you need in order to center yourself in a place that's not the material world, not worldly. However, the issue is that life is busy right now for you. You've been thinking about a lot of your bigger visions. You've been thinking about what is the longer term things that you're trying to do. There have been a lot of pressures maybe on your just sort of needing to get a lot of stuff done, right? It's sort of a taskmaster type situation. So there's on the one hand a need for rest, and on the other hand a need to kind of go, go, go. One thing is that you might get a lot of great inspiration under this eclipse. So taking a little bit of time of quiet might be actually helpful for you to move forward in some of the things that you're trying to do longer term. I know it's not easy. Think back to also the last April eclipse in 2024. You might also get a little bit of information there about what it is that you are trying to deal with and some of the things that you're trying to wrap up in this eclipse. For Gemini rising, this is all about the bigger vision that you have for yourself, and you've been already working through that. But the Mercury retrograde, I believe, has been helping with fostering some of those ideas, really kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of what it is that you would like to do longer term. And all in the background, how that relates to how you make money. So this is an important piece. It's not just having this vision for yourself without any rhyme or reason, but it directly correlates to your bottom line. And you might already be kind of inclined to be thinking about those things in life in general, because you're Gemini rising and Mercury is a business related sign. But this is more than just doing business. This is about kind of the bigger picture for yourself. And all in the background that this year is about your career. This is about the work that you're doing in the outer world. So there's been some challenges around that, but this eclipse is really good for really thinking outside of the box a little bit. And you can also reflect, of course, back to April 2024 to see what were some of those visionary challenges that you were experiencing and what are the things that are finalizing in this upcoming eclipse. So perhaps some of the ideas that you've been meditating on and ruminating on now are crystallizing, and it's time to kind of put that in place. Cancer rising, I just have so much to talk about for you because, of course, for Cancer rising, the moon represents you. And since the moon is an integral part of the eclipse, this is a very important period always. It is also important if you are born on a new moon, if you are born on an eclipse, all of those things, or if you are a very lunar person, so the moon is very strong in your chart. There's also this idea that understanding the health of your moon in your chart, like if your moon is in a really tricky position, then the experience that you have during these eclipses can also be affected. And of course, as I spoke before, that 9 degrees is really important. So especially if you have your moon at 9 degrees of whatever sign, this is going to be important for you. Now, you've been having a hell of a time since September of 2024, very busy, kind of feeling motivated, but also maybe feeling a little burnt out by things. There's been a tremendous amount of focus and energy on your career and your role in life. And it's time to kind of take a step back because the new moon is a quiet time. So you're finalizing that last 18 months in a way and just trying to figure out what it is you want to keep and what it is you want to get rid of. Because after April, when Mars moves out of Cancer and sort of goes on his merry way, there'll also be a little bit more quiet from that perspective, and you'll have a chance to not be frazzled as much as you have been in those last few months. So this eclipse is an extremely important time of thinking about your career, thinking about the work that you're doing, how that relates to your role, and also lean on your friends. Don't be afraid to lean on your friends and go for get some help from some of those insightful friends that might be able to help you along your career path. Don't just hide in your shell during the eclipse. Okay, Leo rising, this one is still about transformation. And I know I've talked about that for a long time now, but it's still very pertinent. However, this eclipse is also a sort of turning point, in my opinion, because it is the culmination of a lot of different things. And so even though there's this undergoing shedding of your skin, the psychological kind of experience, this intense encounter with mortality that you've had since 2023, it's also been about how this relates to your personal belief system in this last 18 months. So there's a strong correlation to not only of this shedding of the skin, but this rebuilding of who you feel like you are. Very powerful. And of course, because the sun is the planet that rules your entire chart and is very much part of the eclipse, we also have a very important period for Leo rising. Now, this is a wonderful time to take a trip. So this is for the whole month ahead. You don't have to do it this weekend. And I actually don't advise on traveling on the exact day of the eclipse. but you might go on a trip that really fulfills a spiritual need, that really fulfills a philosophical need, something that's related to your heritage, or something that's related to something that you align with from a religious or philosophical perspective. So something that contributes to your knowledge base. It's not just a trip for fun's sake. And I don't feel like you're necessarily in that sort of fun zone right now, but it definitely has that feeling. Now, if your midheaven is here, so if your career point is here, this is also something that will affect your career. Could be the ending of a career, could be the new beginning something. So there's also something culminating here after 18 months. And as always, because the new moon is the end of something, we're looking to let go of things. So don't hold on to them. Don't get fixated on things like Leo rising can be sometimes, on certain things. Let it go. Okay, Virgo rising, this is interesting because we've already started eclipses in Virgo and Pisces. So we have the start of an 18-month cycle, and we also have the end of an 18-month cycle with this Aries eclipse. Now, Mercury has been retrograde also since mid-March until, it will be until early April. And that's important because Mercury is the planet that represents you. So this retrograde energy is also making you very much more pensive. It's making you more inward, and it might even cause a little bit of confusion in the outside world. Like you're trying to pay a bill and it doesn't work out, or you're trying to deal with your taxes and something kind of goes wrong with that. It is a good time to let go of certain relationships in your life, because we are having these relationship transits. Do things that, not get rid of people, but perhaps cut ties or end certain relationships that don't make sense. And that might not only be in romantic sense, it might also be in the context of personal relationships, like clients, of patients that you might have, they suddenly stop seeing you, whatever it might be. So it might not even be on your accord. And it's okay to let go of those things. Don't hold on to them so tightly. The other thing is, it also depends on how Mercury is doing in your chart. Of course, Mercury's position and Mercury's health in your own natal chart will dictate how easy this process is going to be for you. And it's also a really good time to think about your finances from a longevity point of view. So anything that has to do with your insurance, your taxes, your estates, that kind of planning, that sort of communing with mortality in some sense, as it translates to worldly matters. So you might find yourself needing to wrap those things up, like really need to just kind of finalize your will, really need to get your health insurance sorted out. So those things are good things to focus on during this time. We have the whole month ahead, so don't panic, and also try not to overthink. Okay, Libra rising, there's just so much going on as well. First of all, the eclipses are signaling some type of ending to a relationship, and it doesn't have to be a mega relationship, but it can be. And this is happening in your relationship house, and this is also something that's been ongoing for the last 18 months. So I don't think this is going to be a sudden ending, let's say. It probably will be something that is finishing off from something you already know. And you might also find that you're inviting a lot of sort of different relationships into your life, because Aries has got this fresh new energy. It can be a little bit impulsive. So maybe you're trying to book lunch with a friend and they cancel on you last minute, or your Aries friends can't get their things together because so much is going on in their charts. So just have a little bit of empathy for others during this period as well, when everybody's Aries energy is really fired up. The other thing is that this is also a time where your ruling planet Venus is kind of feeling overworked and underappreciated. So there's quite a lot of focus on all of the things that you have to get done in life. Venus is in a good sign, but she's in a bad place. So you do have the capacity to overcome it, but it's not going to be without its own difficulties. So again, it's not a really great relationship transit in terms of getting into new ones. I suspect that it's going to be more about the housekeeping around relationships, as well as the housekeeping around your daily life, and how that correlates to your career, because there's also been an ongoing process of, am I going, am I coming? You know, am I starting a new job? Am I leaving a new job? So am I leaving my old job? So there's a bit of a culmination where work is also concerned, and you might find yourself in a transition period of changing work, changing daily work situations. It might not be a career move, but it could be something within your daily work environment that starts to shift and change as well. So bearing that in mind. Okay, Scorpio rising, this is all about kicking bad habits. and how they correlate to what you truly believe in. So say you have a new personal life philosophy that's based around becoming a vegetarian or going keto or whatever it might be, educating yourself about that properly and thoroughly, and then implementing that into your daily routine. And this is also going to trickle down to not only the food that you eat or the healthy habits that you take on, but also how you see your working life day to day. Do you get up in the morning and you go straight to work? Do you need to take some time off earlier in the morning and then get into work? All of these little nuanced details need to be worked out. And it's a good idea to also investigate them thoroughly. So don't just kind of implement them willy-nilly, but actually have a really good foundation for why it is that you're taking these actions to create the life, your daily life that you not only enjoy, but that you believe in. There can be also some health matters that come up around this time. So having those healthy habits are going to correlate to better implementation for a healthy regime. And it's also a wise idea to investigate this not on a physical level, but also at an emotional level as well. For Sagittarius rising, this is a double-edged eclipse because on the one hand, all of the focus is on you, your personal creativity, your mind, really expanding the way that you relate to yourself. And so you might feel inspired to go and dance or to make music or to write or to do something that expresses yourself. We are finalizing the last 18 months of eclipses that have been focusing on this idea of who are you exactly when you call yourself an artist. And I don't mean that just in that artistic, stereotypical artistic sense, but like how you identify with yourself as a creative individual. However, at the same time, there's been a lot of things emotionally weighing you down, things in the home life, things that have to do with the way that you ground yourself, a lot of curveballs that have been thrown into the air since September, whilst Mars has been wreaking a little bit of havoc in Cancer. So I would say that on the one hand, there's a lot of optimism and joy in sort of really coming into yourself. But on the other hand, there's also a lot of grounding that needs to be done. And as a Sagittarius rising, it's a good time to try not to engage in too much movement, to overwhelm yourself. Learn to find the peace internally. Okay, for Capricorn rising, this one is about understanding how to communicate effectively. And the last few months, there have been a lot of ins and outs, let's say, with relationships, with partners. A lot of the focus has also been at home, and this eclipse is also focusing in that home life. So in order to move through that without too much difficulty, it's a good idea to communicate effectively. Now that can be done through therapy, that can be done through writing, automatic writing, any type of creative writing, or just journaling, whatever it is that you feel allows you to express your emotions. Because there can be a very pragmatic approach to life for Capricorn rising, and a need to kind of just deal with things as they come. But during this eclipse, it's actually about understanding how we relate to others and understanding how we relate to ourselves emotionally, understanding how we relate to our family members. So there's a softness that needs to be cultivated during this time. For Aquarius rising, so this one brings a lot of activity to the mind, and there'll be a lot of ideas that come forth to you during this time. However, it's also a time where we want to let go of ideas that just don't make sense, because all of the energy this year is actually focused on dealing with the day-to-day reality of the responsibilities we have in life, whether that's taking care of our family, whether that's taking care of our financial situation. So there's not so much time for endless wandering and endless ideas, which is typical of most Aquarius rising people out there. So on the one hand, you might get a lot of inspiration, but on the other hand, there is this need to ground down and focus on what are the day-to-day steps that you're taking in order for you to realize those ideas. And there might be even some health things that come up around this time. It can definitely be an overworked, sort of underpaid type feeling. And it's also a really great time to get rid of certain friends. So people in your immediate friendship group that really don't make sense. The last 18 months has already been a bit of a focal point on that. And this is the time to cut ties, which is difficult because I think that for Aquarius rising, there is a sense of democracy amongst many friends, having lots of different groups of friends, etc. But it's time to cut some of those people out. Okay, for Pisces rising, this is interesting because we've already started that Pisces Virgo eclipse, and this weekend is finalizing the last 18 months where you've been focused on money, on sustaining yourself, on what it is that you need in order to live life. And it's been a very grounding experience, which is not something that someone with Pisces rising might necessarily want to deal with. So we are finalizing that last 18 months, and maybe you go through your portfolio or whatever it is that you're doing to make money, and you think, okay, this is not the financial instrument for me. This is not the way that I want to make money. I want to change something up a little bit, or this is something that I want to add later on. So the new moon is finalizing those details. It's not a good time to throw your money into risky investments or trades that you're not really that familiar with, because there's some volatility in that area of your chart. And also, this is an ongoing period of getting really real and structuring your life. So any type of risky behavior, let's say, is not advised in general. So this is for the month ahead. Also bearing in mind that it's a bit precarious to get into new romances at this stage. And remember, the focus of your life right now is you.